we stood with Ukraine from the first day. Yeah. We will stand with them also when a potential peace deal comes, no doubt about it, and we will probably step up our aid.
From the icy waters of the Arctic to the political heart of Europe, Norway has always been a strong and reliable ally in the fight for international peace and security. But recent events have put the country at the center of a geopolitical storm. In an unprecedented move, Norway has decided to halt the fueling of U.S. Navy ships in its ports, a decision that could shake the foundations of transatlantic relations. At the same time, the country has reaffirmed its unwavering support for Ukraine, but not without making it clear that it stands opposed to some of the U.S. government's policies, especially regarding its handling of the conflict in Ukraine. Norway, a proud member of NATO, has long been a beacon of stability in Northern Europe. For decades, it has stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States and other NATO allies in the pursuit of global security. But with the ongoing war in Ukraine, tensions have risen, both within Norway's political circles and between it and its traditional allies. It all started when Haltback Bunkers, one of Norway's leading fuel suppliers, made an extraordinary decision to cease refueling operations for U.S. Navy vessels. The company, which supplies fuel to military and commercial ships, announced that it would no longer provide fuel to ships engaged in operations that directly or indirectly support the war in Ukraine. We have reached the conclusion that by continuing to provide fuel to military operations, we are complicit in further escalating a conflict that is already threatening global stability. Our position is that Norway must remain neutral, focusing on peace and diplomacy rather than military escalation. We believe that NATO's involvement in the conflict has only fueled the flames of war, and we can no longer be part of that. The announcement has caused ripples throughout Norway, with some applauding the company for taking a stand, while others are deeply concerned about the impact this could have on Norway's relationship with the United States and the broader NATO alliance. Norway's government, however, has a different position. We are steadfast in our commitment to NATO and to the defense of Ukraine's sovereignty. While we understand that companies are free to make their own decisions, the Norwegian government's position remains unchanged. We will continue to support Ukraine, and we will continue to honor our obligations within NATO. Norway's support for Ukraine has not wavered. Despite the fuel dispute, the country has consistently been one of Ukraine's most vocal and active supporters in Europe. Since the start of Russia's invasion in February 2022, Norway has contributed millions of dollars in military aid, including air defense systems, anti-tank missiles, and advanced surveillance technology. Norwegian forces have also participated in NATO-led missions to bolster security in Eastern Europe, providing training and logistical support to Ukrainian troops. The Russian invasion of Ukraine represents an existential threat to European security. It is our duty, as a member of NATO, to stand with Ukraine in its fight for sovereignty and democracy. Norway will not back down from this responsibility, regardless of the challenges we face. Ukraine has been vocal in its appreciation for Norway's unwavering support. President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly thanked Norway for its contributions, both on the battlefield and in providing essential humanitarian aid to Ukrainian civilians. In return, Norway has called for increased European unity in the face of Russian aggression. Norway's commitment to Ukraine has been a beacon of hope for us in these dark times. We are deeply grateful for your assistance, both in arms and in spirit. Together, we will defeat tyranny and ensure a free and democratic Europe for future generations. However, while the Norwegian government continues to stand firm on its support for Ukraine, it is clear that the nation's political landscape is divided. In the parliament, some members have expressed concern about the risks of escalating tensions with Russia. Norway shares a border with Russia in the Arctic, and many fear that the country's involvement in the conflict could make it a target for Russian aggression. There is growing anxiety over the long-term consequences of angering a nuclear power in the Arctic region. Norway's continued involvement in the war in Ukraine, as a member of NATO, has put our country in a dangerous position. Our proximity to Russia should not be underestimated. While we must support Ukraine, we must also ensure that we are not inadvertently leading our nation into a wider conflict. The concerns within Norway have also extended to its relationship with NATO. While Norway has pledged its loyalty to the alliance, the tension between European nations is palpable. Several NATO members, including the US, have criticized the fuel decision, stating that it undermines the unity of the alliance at a critical moment in the conflict. Norway's actions are concerning, and we have expressed our concerns to the Norwegian government. NATO's strength lies in its unity, and this decision raises questions about our ability to act cohesively in the face of Russian aggression. We hope that this is a temporary situation and that Norway will continue to honor its commitments to NATO. In the United States, there is frustration over the fuel decision. The U.S. military has long relied on Norway as a strategic ally in the North Atlantic, and this recent development has raised questions about the future of U.S.-Norway relations. While the U.S. has reassured NATO that it will continue to fulfill its defense commitments, there is a growing concern that Norway's political shift could inspire other countries to reassess their support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has capitalized on the growing divisions within NATO. Moscow has repeatedly warned that the conflict in Ukraine is pushing Europe to the brink of a wider war, and it has hinted that it may take retaliatory actions against countries like Norway that continue to support Ukraine's military efforts. Russian state media has characterized Norway's decision as a betrayal of neutrality, and many analysts believe that Norway could face increased military pressure in the coming months. Norway's actions are irresponsible. By providing weapons and support to Ukraine, it is directly aiding in the destabilization of Europe. We will respond accordingly. Norway, like all NATO members, is now a legitimate target in this conflict. Despite the external pressures, the Norwegian people have largely remained supportive of their government's stance. Protests and rallies in support of Ukraine have been held across the country, with thousands of citizens voicing their commitment to Ukraine's fight for freedom. The sense of solidarity with the Ukrainian people is palpable in Norwegian streets, as many citizens view the Russian invasion as a direct threat to European values of democracy and human rights. Norway stands with Ukraine. Our support for Ukraine is not just about politics, it is about values. It is about standing up for the principles of freedom, democracy, and human dignity. We will continue to support Ukraine, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that Russia's aggression is stopped. Norway's position in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine continues to evolve. While tensions rise with the U.S. over the fuel supply decision and concerns about the nation's security mount, Norway's commitment to Ukraine remains resolute. As the conflict continues to rage in Eastern Europe, the eyes of the world will remain on Norway, as its actions may hold the key to shaping the future of European security and NATO's cohesion in the years to come.